Hey there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's good to be with you on this Tuesday, August 30th, and here's some of what we're talking about tonight. The last leader of the Soviet Union has died. We'll look back on the life of Mikhail Gorbachev and consider what his legacy means for today's Russia. Months of incessant rain in Pakistan have left a third of that country underwater. Meanwhile, the biggest city in Mississippi is dealing with its own water crisis.
Please stay safe. Do not drink the water.
Plus, former President Trump hires a high-profile lawyer. We'll have details on that move and the investigation of those Mar-a-Lago documents. And President Biden lays out his plan to reduce gun violence.
I'm determined to ban assault weapons in this country. Determined.
Today, one of the 20th century's most influential leaders died. The man who oversaw the end of the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev lived to be 91. Local reports say he died after a serious and long illness. Mr. Gorbachev tried to reform the USSR in hopes of reshaping the economy and making the government more transparent. He is perhaps best known in the West for helping end the Cold War and lifting the Iron Curtain, and that earned him a Nobel Peace Prize in 1990. NBC's Keir Simmons looks back on his life.
By Soviet standards, Mikhail Gorbachev's rule was short, but the last leader of the Soviet Union said his 6 years in power felt like a lifetime. In 1985, the aging members of the Soviet Politburo turned to the 54-year-old Gorbachev to breathe new life into the system. Little did they know the dark-suited bureaucrat with the distinctive birthmark would not only change the Communist Party, but the world.
Let's end the Cold War, let's end the nuclear confrontation, let's abolish nuclear weapons. That was revolutionary.
Gorbachev made friends with the Soviet Union's former enemies, none more so than the US President Ronald Reagan. They negotiated a breakthrough nuclear missile treaty and formed a strong bond. That same year, Gorbachev sat down with NBC's Tom Brokaw, a TV first, and Americans were amazed by this open, reassuring Soviet leader and charmed by Raisa, the first Soviet First Lady they'd ever seen. But it was at home where Gorbachev's two big ideas, glasnost or openness and perestroika, economic restructuring, let a genie out of the bottle even he couldn't put back. We could and should have saved the Soviet Union, but we lost politically, he later said. Soviets got more freedom, but nothing to buy. The economy collapsed. While in Eastern Europe, people didn't embrace his reforms, they fled them. But in perhaps his most iconic act, Gorbachev let the Berlin Wall fall, and a year later was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. But back in Moscow, his own colleagues plotted and failed to overthrow him in a three-day coup. When Gorbachev returned from house arrest in the Crimea, he landed in a different world. Russian President Boris Yeltsin was now firmly in charge. Within months, Gorbachev resigned, and the Soviet Union was no more. Years later, he said his main concern was to avoid bloodshed. There could have been civil war in a country saturated with nuclear weapons, he said. He went on to become an international celebrity, making ads for Pizza Hut and Louis Vuitton to fund his foundation. In Russia, few paid attention to his calls for more democracy.
He's a hero to many. The majority of the world, he's a hero. To a minority, he's a villain.
Mikhail Sergeyevich Gorbachev, the man who ended the Cold War, was never forgiven for the demise of his country and died largely reviled by his own people. Keir Simmons, NBC News.
Let's get further into Mikhail Gorbachev's legacy with Dr. Donald Jensen. He's the director for Russia and Europe at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Dr. Jensen, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I think it's hard to talk about the legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev, at least here in the U.S., without including this famous moment from the former President Ronald Reagan in West Berlin back in the summer of 1987. Watch.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
That's the moment that a lot of Americans remember. Talk more about Gorbachev's role in tearing down that wall and ending the Cold War.
Certainly, certainly. As you say, a very complex figure on whom history has given a decidedly mixed judgment. Gorbachev and his colleagues, and we weren't aware of this at the time, essentially decided in 1982 and 3 and 4 that the Russian economy was winding down. This was the era of the Japanese challenge. This was the era of U.S. Arms control improvements. This was an era when the Russian leadership, Kremlin, decided they could not compete with the West unless the system was reformed, was renovated, still the system, but changed drastically. And they picked this young, very charismatic leader after, remember, a very sick Andropov, a very sick Chernenko, and it was a shock, frankly. And I can remember, and I had just joined the Foreign Service a month or two before, people wondering, who is this guy? We don't know much about him. He was from southern Russia. He had an agricultural background. No one could have anticipated what had happened, because the first challenge was, is this guy's talk about reform serious? It was. It didn't work, but it unleashed this, I would say, Pandora's box of forces, which we see even today under Putin. That all became true when Gorbachev decided to relax the controls, the Soviet system. And all this other stuff came out of the box, and a lot of us did not expect it. And we see the consequences in the past 30 years of what he unleashed.
When did it become clear that Mikhail Gorbachev really was going to be historic in the ways that he planned to? I mean, he was able to form a bond with President Reagan and open Russia up to the West. When did it become clear initially that this guy had something?
Well, Mr. Johnson, I think it became clear in 86 and 87. The reaching out to President Reagan, as you said, the reaching out to Prime Minister Thatcher, all convinced a lot of skeptics, and there were many skeptics here in Washington, that this guy was serious. The problem is, what does serious mean? There's serious and there's serious. Some people thought he'd be frustrated by his very conservative traditional opposition. Some people thought he would be he was not serious till the end. We just did not know. And certainly that's to the credit of President Reagan and Prime Minister Thatcher and others in the West. And I would single out Eastern Europe in particular for seizing the opportunity. Gradually, minds were changed. But, you know, by that time in 88, 89, and 90, the forces were already unleashed, and it became increasingly clear that even a reformed Soviet Union, such as envisioned by Mr. Gorbachev, was not going to be able to hold all of this. The most notable result at the time, of course, was the emergence of Boris Yeltsin as the leader of a Russian coalition that wanted to do away with the Soviet Union entirely. And this was a surprise because, as you probably remember, you're probably too young to remember, the U.S. officials, particularly President Bush, basically told the Russian people, the Soviet peoples, to stick with Gorbachev, that he was a reformer, and that would bring the Soviet Union into the modern era. Of course, it didn't work.
I know I have to let you go in just a minute. I think it's easy for people to tune in and think, oh, great, we're starting a news program with a history lesson. Thanks, Josh. But I think his life is relevant now, especially when you look at Vladimir Putin and the kind of Russia that he's trying to create and the concerns over Ukraine, what it might mean for other former Soviet states. We know Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are looking south and east with real concern. What should we bear in mind about the legacy of Mikhail Gorbachev as we continue to watch what comes out of Russia under Vladimir Putin? Before we go.
Thank you, Josh. We have to make, above all, that Russian domestic politics determines a lot of its foreign policy behavior, number one. And in fact, that was the reason for perestroika. It didn't work, as I said. Number two is that Russia still has this imperial dream, as we see with Putin. And these forces were not eliminated in 91, as many people thought. These forces really stepped back, only to come back later. The KGB in particular was not particularly reformed and we see the consequences now. And the third lesson is more positive. We see the relevance of a strong, charismatic leader like Gorbachev, determined to bring peace with his Western partners. And that shows that even with Putin, as bad as the situation is, that there can be movement forward, there can be progress if goodwill on both sides prevails.
Dr. Donald Jensen of the U.S. Institute of Peace, really appreciate the context on this story tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Still to come, severe flooding. Monsoons in Pakistan are still displacing tens of millions of people. Ali Arouzi has more on that in a moment. And floods in Mississippi have knocked out drinking water in its capital city. We're glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. Months of constant rainfall have left a third of Pakistan underwater. A third. Officials are calling it that country's worst flood ever. Pakistan is in South Asia. It's bordered by Afghanistan and Iran to its west and India to the east. Monsoons there have killed at least 1,100 people. They've wiped out around 1 million homes and thousands of miles of roads. New satellite images show how the flooding has completely changed the landscape in parts of the country. Pakistani authorities estimate nearly $10 billion of damage so far and counting. Today, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on other nations to help pay for the recovery.
The United Nations is issuing a flash appeal for $160 million to support the response led by the government of Pakistan. Let us all step up in solidarity and support to the people of Pakistan in their hour of need.
And that hour of need is not over. Pakistan is expecting more rain in the next few days. NBC's Ali Arouzi has more on the situation there. Hey, Ali.
Hi, Joshua. Well, the sheer magnitude of the devastation and destruction is hard to fathom. The livelihood of millions of people washed away. Let's take a look at what's been happening on the ground in Pakistan. Floods of epic proportions in Pakistan have claimed the lives of at least 1,100 people, caused unprecedented devastation across the country while displacing millions, according to the Pakistani government. Oceans of water submerge entire districts. Not a single government official has visited this small village that NBC News visited today in northern Pakistan. Residents left to fend for themselves, salvaging what they can.
The water is now...
Pakistan's climate minister, Sherry Rehman, appealing for international help to tackle what she calls a monster monsoon that has left a third of the country, an area roughly the size of the United Kingdom, underwater. The flooding catastrophe has been brought on by weeks of extreme monsoonal rainfall and melting glaciers, making it far from a normal monsoon. Pakistani officials are calling it climate dystopia on their doorstep. The deluge destroying bridges, roads, washing away hundreds of thousands of homes, wiping out food and cotton crops, creating food insecurity and damage to textile exports. Officials say early estimates put the damage at more than $10 billion. Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif flying over the disaster zone on Sunday, saying it was the worst monsoon Pakistan has seen in 3 decades. Tweeting, "The magnitude of the calamity is bigger than estimated." More than 30 million people have been affected by the disaster. That's roughly 1 in 7 Pakistanis, with over 500,000 forced to seek refuge in temporary camps. Today, NBC News visited a refugee camp in northern Pakistan, where people are getting sick and lacking basic humanitarian assistance. This resident of the camp telling us they've only been fed rice since arriving at the camp. The military has been deploying rescue helicopters, but they're struggling to pluck people to safety in the north, where steep hills and valleys make flying conditions treacherous. The worst affected areas are in the south of the country, with most of the destruction falling along the Indus River.
Pakistan is a war.
UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres has called it a monsoon on steroids, squarely blaming climate change, warning that we are sleepwalking towards disaster. The forecast for Pakistan is not good. With more deluge and destruction expected, the country is bracing itself for worse to come. And Joshua, Pakistan was already in an economic crisis, facing high inflation, a depreciating currency, and a current account deficit. Now, initial estimates put the damage in Pakistan at about 10 billion, but they expect that to go up much further. Essential food crops have been wiped out. Textile crops have also been wiped out, creating food insecurity and export problems for a country that was already struggling to keep its head above water.
More than enough for them to worry about right now. Thank you, Ali. That's NBC's Ali Arouzi with the latest from Pakistan. Meanwhile, flooding in Mississippi's capital is causing a water emergency there. The city of Jackson has about 150,000 residents. Very few of them have drinking water tonight. Days of flooding overwhelmed Jackson's infrastructure, and its utilities cannot pump out enough clean water for everyone. NBC's Guad Venegas has the latest on that. Hey, Guad.
Joshua, we know that the governor is sending additional resources here to Jackson. We've got the National Guard that is now going to be involved because of this emergency declaration. But for the people of Jackson, long before this flood, they had been dealing with issues with the water. There was this boil water notice in place for weeks. Now, with the flooding that came and is now receding back to its normal levels, they say there was damage at this plant. Authorities say that somehow that flooding created essentially a mess that ended up making this plant fail. So we went out into the community to ask people what it's been like living in Jackson and if things actually got worse in the last few days. Most people told us they've been dealing with issues before, but they did get worse in these last few days. A lot of them telling us that there's been days where they can't even shower. We spoke to this mother who told us what it's like to live with the water service in Jackson.
It sucks. You know, it really sucks, especially when you have kids that like to go outside. You know, it's hot, it's muggy. No water. It's been like that on and off actually throughout the whole summer. We've had to boil water to cook, to wash dishes, you know, pretty much to brush our teeth. We have to have a boil water and put in a dispenser. So it's been hectic, but we're making it.
So again, the issues for the community were here. They had been dealing with this for a very long time. What's changed is that now this plant has been failing. And the governor says that now the residents here can't be assured that they will have running water. They're trying to work on these issues. We have the resources coming in, but we don't know when things will be solved here in Jackson. What we do know is that the state keeps making preparations to distribute water for almost 200,000 people in Jackson and its surroundings. But the real solution here will be to establish a reliable plant to either fix this plant or do something so that people have reliable running water here in Jackson. Joshua.
Thank you, Guad. That's NBC's Guad Venegas reporting from Mississippi. Well, this summer's been really busy with heavy rain across the country, but hurricane season has been relatively quiet, at least so far. Still, forecasters are watching two systems right now that could develop this week. You'll hear from the director of the National Hurricane Center just ahead. Stay close. This week, the West Coast is prepping for what could be a historic heat wave. About 52 million people there are under heat advisories, and those scorching temperatures could last well into Labor Day weekend. NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman has the forecast. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Joshua, great to see you. The coast-to-coast heat does continue, and we're looking at a dangerous heat wave in the west. The northeast, it's hot today, it's steamy, but a cold front is moving through, and that's going to bring some relief tomorrow. It's still going to be warm, but the humidity will be wiped away, so much more comfortable. But the west, we're going to see a dangerous heat wave over the next several days into early next week. So temperatures in the 90s into the triple digits for so many of us, and we are under a heat alert in the west for portions of the northwest into the Intermountain West and also the southwest. 52 million million people impacted. First by a heat advisory, that's in the orange. That includes Spokane, also Boise. Then we have a heat watch. That's in the darker pink. Sacramento, you are under a heat watch. And an excessive heat warning in the hot pink. Los Angeles, San Diego, you will see temperatures into the 90s and also some spots into the triple digits. So taking a look at tomorrow's forecast, we could break some records. It will be historical as we go throughout the next couple of days. Boise 104 tomorrow, record of 102, 98 degrees in Reno. And we're going to be into the triple digits in Fresno. Also in Palmdale, you're going to be near 107, but you do have a record of 109. And that heat does continue throughout the week into Saturday and also into the early part of next week. I'll show you those numbers in just a bit. But for Boise, over the triple digit mark on Friday, Saturday near 110 in Las Vegas on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Phoenix 107 on Thursday, same story on Friday, and you're going to be near 109 on Saturday. And then remember the Labor Day weekend, we are looking at that holiday heat wave to continue. So no relief in sight. We're looking at temperatures over 110 in Sacramento on Saturday, on Sunday, also on Monday. Los Angeles near the triple digits on Saturday, 100 degrees on Sunday, and 98 on Monday. And this is when it gets dangerous, when it's days and days of heat. That's hard for the body to recover. So this will be historic. This is going to be a story we're going to be talking about for days to come. And it does look like we could break some September monthly records, and we could even break some all-time records. And then unfortunately, looking even further out, this is from NOAA, it's a monthly outlook. We're looking warmer than average in portions of the Southwest, the Intermountain West, even into the Central Plains and portions of the Northwest as well. That is not the only spot where we're going to be hot. We're hot and humid in the South. We also have a front that's moving through. So unfortunately, looking at more southern soakers tomorrow. This is a spot that does not need more rain. And we're looking at rains 2 to 3 inches per hour. We could see 1, 2, 3 inches. And by Thursday, still looking at more widespread rain in Texas. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. That's NBC meteorologist Michelle Grossman with the heat and the rain in the forecast. Well, the summer's actually been pretty quiet in terms of tropical storms and hurricanes. Forecasters say that could change. The National Hurricane Center has named 3 storms so far this season. Tropical storms Alex, Bonnie, and Colin formed in June and July. August has had no storms. That has only happened in 2 other Augusts, 1997 and 1961. Right now, forecasters are watching these 2 areas for potential storms. If one of them develops, the next tropical system would be named Danielle. Joining us now is Jamie Rome, the acting director of the National Hurricane Center. Mr. Rome, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about these 2 systems that the Hurricane Center is watching. One's near the Antilles, one's just off the west coast of Africa. What do we make of those systems so far?
Well, they both show signs of development and potentially becoming a tropical depression or a tropical storm over the next couple of days, which is why we have them identified accordingly on our outlook. You see 40% chance on the one closer to Western Africa and 80% chance or high probability of becoming a tropical cyclone on the one closer to the Leeward Island.
And just to be clear, this is a chance that they would form into some kind of tropical cyclone, not necessarily that they would become a strong tropical storm or a strong hurricane. That still remains to be seen, right?
Yeah, the verdict is still out on that. So our genesis probabilities are what you just showed up on the screen, are the probability of becoming a tropical depression, a tropical storm, but don't necessarily indicate they would become a hurricane.
What do you make of this season so far? The current prediction is for an above normal Atlantic hurricane season, but so far we haven't had very much in terms of tropical cyclones, tropical storms, hurricanes, and so on. What do you make of that early prediction based on what we've seen in the season so far? Does that still hold?
We're very thankful for the slow start to the season. I mean, I think everyone can use a breather after the incredibly intense couple of seasons that we've had with respect to not only the number of named storms, but the number of landfalling storms. Now, what does it hold for the future of the hurricane season, a slow start? We've gone back and looked at past seasons or the history or climatology of past seasons, and it's not necessarily predictive for what you will have the rest of the hurricane season. And since we're coming up on the peak of hurricane season, which is the second week of September, all indications are at some point the tropic will awaken, and we need to remain vigilant and prepared for when that ultimately happens.
How do you see the peaks and valleys of hurricane seasons now compared to in the past? I mean, you know, we're still getting a lot of rain across the country. We're dealing with some very significant flooding. This is kind of that wet, rainy season after all, but not so much in the form of organized tropical systems. Does that have any impact on the way that the Hurricane Center tries to forecast hurricanes and tropical storms, or is that something that the current models already sort of factor in?
Yeah, the current models are, you know, the globe, the atmosphere is all interconnected. So what happens in one part of the globe is connected to what happens in another part of the globe. And so while we're not explicitly factoring in, you know, rainfall in another part of the world in our forecast, the moisture is within our numerical weather prediction systems, and if they were to have an impact on the formation of tropical cyclones, it would be reflected in our forecast.
A lot has changed in the last few decades since I was a little kid growing up in South Florida, watching, you know, the little line on TV as hurricanes move across the map. You know, we just marked 30 years since Hurricane Andrew. It's been 17 years since Hurricane Katrina. And the work of the National Hurricane Center, having covered a lot of hurricanes, has gotten so much sharper over the last few decades, partly with technology. And in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's another $100 million for NOAA to get another Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Talk about where just the work of forecasting sits right now and where you see it going from here.
This is my 23rd hurricane season at the Hurricane Center, and the celebration of Andrew gave us all an opportunity to look back. And I think for those of us who were part of it, it's still shocking to look back and see how far we've come. For example, since Andrew, our track forecast errors have improved 75%, so a 75% reduction in the errors in our track forecast. And our intensity forecasts have improved by 50%, so a radical improvement. And we're not done yet. You alluded to new aircraft funding within a recent bill, but there's other instrumentation packages that we're bringing online, and new supercomputing we just implemented a new supercomputer a few weeks ago that has 3 times the horsepower, or 3 times the power of our previous supercomputer. And so now what our forecasters are doing, especially while the tropics are relatively quiet, is pushing really, really hard to make sure that science and technology is utilized this season, not next hurricane season, but this hurricane season, trying to extract every tiny ounce of improvement possible.
Jamie Rome, the acting director of the National Hurricane Center, I certainly hope that people understand how much stronger forecasts are now than even a few years ago, and take the forecasts seriously when severe weather threatens their homes. Appreciate you talking to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
We will have more of tonight's headlines in just a moment, including the latest on the push for oversight of the documents taken at Mar-a-Lago, a new liftoff schedule for the delayed Artemis 1 mission to the moon, and a new plan to raise the pay of California's fast food workers. Today was the deadline for the Justice Department to respond to former President Trump's request for a special master. I'll explain that term in just a second. DOJ says it will file a 40-page response with a federal judge in South Florida. The original 20-page limit was apparently not enough to address all the legal issues that President Trump's lawyers raised. After the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago, his legal team asked for a special master to review the seized documents. That's an independent arbiter assigned to filter out privileged documents. Yesterday, the DOJ said it already set aside items that could be covered by attorney-client privilege. Mr. Trump's team has until tomorrow night to respond to the government's filing, and a hearing on the matter is scheduled for this Thursday. This is why we always keep NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos nearby. He never leaves the building. He just woke up from under the table. We keep him here at all times in case of questions like this.
You are so right. You have no idea how right you are.
Oh, I believe it. And part of the reason why I put it that way, jokingly, but like, this feels like a lot of paperwork. There's the filing over the special master and then the hearing over the filing over the special master, but the DOJ already did the separation of the documents. And I feel like, oh my God, wake me up when September ends. At what point do I need to tune in on this? This feels like a lot of very incremental paperwork, but it's paperwork about something super consequential. So help me understand where we are.
It is an unintended benefit that these cases, the Trump era, has educated everybody about things like federal procedure, which you wouldn't expect anyone to have just a smattering of an idea about. Now we're talking about it every night. I find that exciting. But in this particular case, it is really complicated. You had a search warrant that was proceeding in one court, and now you have a motion in another court to appoint a special master. And a special master, like you described, is just a neutral third party, usually a retired federal judge with experience in dealing with criminal matters, to go through documents. And usually, most of the time in high-profile cases, it involves a search of an attorney's offices. And I think that's very significant because that is not the situation here. This is an exception to the rule, if there is a rule, that special masters are appointed in cases where you're searching an attorney's office and you might have privileged, attorney-client privileged documents, not just with the target of your investigation, but other innocent defendants who happen to have the same attorney.
So how does that affect the conversation about a special master? Because we're not talking about a civilian, about a private citizen who's talking about attorney-client privilege. We're talking about someone who worked in the White House whose attorney was the White House counsel. So are the DOJ and the former president's legal teams having an apples-to-apples conversation about this?
Well, that's the exciting thing about this, in the sense that Trump's lawyers and the government can cite case law, and that case law might deal with attorneys' offices, but there is no prior case law on search warrants at a former president's home and office in Mar-a-Lago, so to speak. But this just hasn't happened before. So even our case law, as developed as it is, as we look to the courts that decided similar issues before, there's just nothing that is so similar to this. It is a case, in a sense, of first impression.
I'm also not sure if, at this point, help me with this, in terms of, from the perspective of a defense attorney, let's say, if you are concerned about what might be in these documents, and you're dealing with the Department of Justice, but they haven't filed charges yet, right? Theoretically, they may never file charges. They're still very much within their purview to say, oh, we don't have anything strong enough to make a case. So asking for a special master at this point kind of feels like delaying what might or might not be inevitable. But it's not a cinch yet that anyone will be charged.
Yeah, delaying. In fact, I'm surprised that the Trump team is asking for a special master, but I'm even more surprised that the government is even bothering to oppose it. And I'm even more surprised that they asked for double the 20-page limit. That's a standard limit. I'm working on a brief now. It's 20 pages. I dare not ask the judge for more than 20 pages because they don't want to read it. But the government's asked for 40 pages in this case to oppose something I don't think they should be opposing, other than maybe refuting the factual allegations contained in the Trump team's motion. But otherwise, it seems to me strategically the government should be all for a special master. So what? They've already reviewed the documents. Yes, they gave the documents to a filter team or a taint team. That's like a walled off, in theory, and I'm a jaded defense attorney. In theory, these government lawyers say, hey, guys, you go in this room and don't tell us what you find. If you find a severed head or a smoking gun, we don't want to hear about it.
Keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself. But, I mean, look, in theory, they keep it separate. At this point, they've already reviewed the documents. They have everything. What's the special master really going to do? Sift through and find a few attorney-client privileged documents or privileged documents that shouldn't have been turned over in the first place? Maybe. I think the government has already won. It seems to me they don't need to oppose this at all, let alone ask for 40 pages to oppose it. So maybe we'll learn something new if we ever find out what's in that filing.
Well, and what I'm kind of wondering about with that, in terms of just the length of it, we've got Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, former federal judge, at one point was on track to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice. So he clearly knows that we're on, new territory here in terms of what these documents could portend, what the investigation could portend. The former president has hired Florida's former Solicitor General, Chris Kise, to represent him in the criminal probe of the documents. And we are talking about documents of every level of national security classification, confidential, secret, and top secret, including what we learned from the documents that came out last week, documents that come from spies overseas, documents that are marked never to be shared with foreign governments. So it's almost hard to overstate the precedent that this sets based on America's national security.
It's even more complicated. How do you appoint a special master? Normally, this is someone dealing with attorney-client privilege type things in criminal cases. Now you have to find someone who additionally can deal with sensitive information, confidential, top secret, SCI, all these different classifications. How are you going to find someone to deal with this kind of special master duties? And keep in mind, it's usually one person, maybe some assistants, but certainly not the team of people that DOJ can devote with its resources to reviewing these documents. It is, and again, we're in new ground here. This is a new frontier. The case law and prior case decisions almost don't help us that much because they've never dealt with anything like this. So whatever judge ends up having to handle this, whether it be in the Southern District of Florida or somewhere else, is doing something for the first time.
What time's your next hitter? Do you get a decent nap?
I got 2 more in the next hour and then midnight. And no, I'm kidding. This is it. I got to go home. I'm back at 5 tomorrow.
I'll let you get back to nap and get like 20 seconds of sleep. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Fast food workers in California could soon get a say in their pay and working conditions under a new state bill. Today, California State Senate and Assembly passed that measure. Assembly Bill 257 would create a 10-member fast food council. It's a rare concept in the U.S. known as sectoral bargaining. The council would include labor and business representatives along with 2 state officials. NBC's Miguel Almaguer has more.
After months of rallies across California, the new legislative victory for fast food workers could transform the industry and significantly impact the wages earned by hundreds of thousands of low-paid workers.
I'm overjoyed. I never thought to be part of a movement like this.
Under the bill, employees like Evelyn Barrias could easily make up to $22 an hour starting next year and an annual cost of living adjustment.
I have 4 children. We're barely making ends meet to pay for our apartment. It would change my life completely.
Still in need of the governor's approval, the measure is a major step toward sectoral bargaining, which gives workers a seat at the table with employers. Rare in the United States, only sectors like auto manufacturing use similar negotiations.
This bill brings equity for Black and Latino fast food workers up and down the state of California. It means that they can both put food on the table and gas in the tank.
Impacting restaurant chains with at least 100 locations nationwide, experts believe raising wages will increase salaries for those in other sectors like retail. Some argue it also comes at a cost.
What's the impact for customers?
Yeah, I think customers are going to see a 20% effective food tax on menu items just to pay for this bill.
Tonight, the fight over fast food laws and its impact on both sides of the counter. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
Today marks 1 year since U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan. That effectively ended the longest war in American history. And since then, tens of thousands of refugees have made their way to the United States in search of a better life. Some of them shared their stories with NBC's Aaron McLaughlin.
The fall of Kabul to the Taliban triggered fear, chaos, and confusion. A year later, more than 75,000 Afghans have managed to escape to the U.S. Many resettling in communities like Turlock, California, where some are still struggling and not receiving the services they need to begin a new life. It's here that we meet 4-year-old Mohammed, who, with the help of Krishan Campbell, is getting his vaccinations, possibly for the second time because his family says the medical records have been lost since arriving in the U.S.
Good job.
Campbell doesn't work for a resettlement agency, and scheduling and driving families to and from medical appointments isn't her responsibility as a child development supervisor for the county. But she says she's left with little choice.
We'll get a request from a family to take them to the grocery store or something like that. And so that is not typical of what our program does. And this is happening every time? Yes. I noticed there might be a
bit of frustration there.
It's sadness and frustration for the families.
Someone is supposed to be helping them.
Yes.
And it's not happening.
Not to the extent that we understood.
In California, the federal government has tasked 23 resettlement agencies and community partners to assist new refugee arrivals. In Turlock, that responsibility falls solely on the International Rescue Committee, an NGO that's contracted to help recent Afghan arrivals navigate the complex U.S. systems. From finding housing to accessing health services to enrolling in English language instruction. And yet, we interviewed refugees who say they're frustrated and feeling left behind, like 25-year-old Mustafa Hassani, who, when we met him, had been living in the same motel room for 8 months.
It's really hard. I mean, living alone here, having no one around to talk to, it's really hard for me.
Nasir Ahmad Alam used to work as a security guard at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. Now he's found work at a car wash in Turlock, and his family has settled into an apartment. But he says they're still struggling and in need of more help. Do you feel supported?
I feel disappointed when I'm contacting or referring to IRC, ask for support. They're saying go and come after a month or 2 months, so I feel disappointed for this.
Do you miss your home?
Yeah, I miss. I'm missing my family in my country.
In a statement, the IRC points to the historically large challenge and incredible task of scaling up to meet the increased resettlement goal under the Biden administration, after the dismantling of the refugee resettlement infrastructure under the Trump administration, adding that in most communities, virtually all refugees have been transferred into permanent housing, and significant benefits have been dispersed. But community advocates are still frustrated that more hasn't been done.
Can't have people falling through the cracks like this. They stood up for the American mission in Afghanistan. People deserve better.
That was NBC's Erin McLaughlin reporting. NASA's new mission to the moon has a new launch date after scrubbing yesterday's takeoff. Artemis 1 is now scheduled to take off this Saturday. NASA says the weather could be dicey. It's predicting a 60% no-go chance for Saturday. The mission team scrubbed yesterday's launch because one of the rocket's 4 engines could not reach the proper temperature. Now, NASA says there is nothing wrong with the engine. It probably just had a sensor providing bad data. But just in case, officials plan to keep analyzing that data before this weekend's launch. The White House has a message for the midterms: paychecks instead of pistols. And President Biden is calling for a ban on assault weapons. More on his plan to fight gun violence before we go.
I'm determined to ban assault weapons in this country. Determined. I did it once before, and I'll do it again. For many of you home, I want to be clear. It's not about taking away anybody's guns. In fact, we should be treating responsible gun owners as examples how every gun owner should behave.
President Biden has been hitting the road supporting Democrats in the midterms. Now he's emphasizing policing and crime reduction as central issues for his party. Today, Mr. Biden was in Pennsylvania. He laid out a new proposal called the Safer America Plan. The president has spent quite a bit of time in the state. It's holding some key elections this November, including for the U.S. Senate and for governor.
So let me say this to my MAGA Republican friends in Congress. Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you won't condemn what happened on the 6th. For God's sake, whose side are you on? You can't be pro-law enforcement and pro-insurrection.
Joining us now is Mark Claxton, the Director of Public Relations for the Black Law Enforcement Alliance and a retired NYPD detective. Mr. Claxton, good to see you again. Welcome.
Great to be on, Joshua. Thanks for having me.
I was just looking because I know Pew Research has been doing polling about the issues that are most important to voters right now. And gun policy, since they did their poll in March, has gone up 8 points in terms of its stated importance to voters in the 2022 election. Economy by far is number one, but gun policy and violent crime seem to be going up. How do you see this strategy by President Biden to talk more about violence prevention in the run-up to the midterms?
I think it's a wise strategy for the president. I think it's wise for him to not only discuss the issues of public safety, gun violence, the possibility of an assault weapons ban and what that would mean, and him really laying out his history on that particular issue and how important it was to decrease gun violence and gun-related crimes when it was in effect. And also for him to assert quite clearly his confidence and support of the law enforcement community. So really the announcement today had a dual purpose. It was to lay out quite clearly the president's perspectives and priorities as it relates to public safety, but to also let the law enforcement community know that it is clear that he has their back and he supports them, and he's trying to shift the messaging from the last election term where there was so much conversation about defunding police and trying to really focus on a new direction moving forward about higher accountability, but also some additional support for police agencies.
Yeah, he mentioned, he mentioned moving past defunding the police in the State of the Union address. He also mentioned it today with regards to the defund the police movement. Here's part of what the president said. Watch.
When it comes to public safety in this nation, the answer is not defund the police, it's fund the police. I'm tired of not giving the kind of help they need. Folks, look, we're in a situation in this country where we have to give them additional resources they need to get their job done.
With regard, though, to reducing crime, it almost sounds like the president's kind of talking about two things, right? Because he's talking about assault weapons, banning assault weapons again, which he also brought up last week during a campaign appearance in Rockville, Maryland, which is just outside of D.C. But then he had this message about lawlessness and opposing law enforcement. And that has more to do with the concerns over domestic violent extremism, groups like the Proud Boys and others whose members have been caught up in prosecution around January 6th. As someone who's been in law enforcement for a long time, how do you see those two aspects in terms of what the administration can do, dealing with everyday crime, if there is such a thing, and this more politicized extremism that is also affecting law enforcement? How do you see the balance of those two things?
I think it's important, and kudos to the president for doing this, and that is to demonstrate, to articulate a legislative agenda or priority, and that being banning the assault weapons, but also recognizing how to operationalize a more efficient law enforcement mechanism. And quite frankly, I'll tell you what the president accomplished today, and as a retired law enforcement professional, I retired from the NYPD. What he did was to demonstrate how silent and in many ways impotent many of the organized law enforcement organizations have been, especially with the discussion about whether or not you support insurrectionists and how could you possibly be pro-law enforcement. We should be mindful that there are some national and international law enforcement organizations who were squarely in support of large GOP ideas and Trumpism, specifically endorsed Trump, etc., and they have yet to be held accountable for those endorsements and support. And they have yet to make the statements that the president made, indicating quite clearly that there's no way that you can be pro-law enforcement yet be pro-insurrectionist. I thought that was very important and significant, and moving forward, I think there'll be continued discussion about that.
I know I got to let you go in about 1 minute, but there's also been a continuing conversation about policing. We've got stories right now, whether it's the officers who were part of the raid that killed Breonna Taylor or the lack of a proper police response at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. That effort to build in police reforms, law enforcement reforms, seems to have stalled out in Congress. Where do you think that should go from here, briefly, before we go?
Well, I think if it had not been for the president's executive order in regards to some of these reform ideas a few months ago, there really would be nothing significant or substance to talk about. There is a lot of of room that needs to be improved in regards to policing reform. I think people are more have a taste for accountability in police agencies now, and I think moving forward, that's what you'll find, and that's why the extra additional reporting requirements are there in every piece of legislation. So I think that's the focus moving forward.
Mark Claxton of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance, thank you very much. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you for making time for us. Love your thoughts on this or anything we discussed tonight. We're at NBC Now Tonight on social media. Call us at 888-575-2NBC or email us nowtonight@nbcnews.com. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.